Released in 2022, this unlicensed Indiana Jones by Present Toys is a bold attempt to recreate the one and only Harrison Ford, who, despite his immense popularity, had arguably never had a definitive appearance in this hobby. Sure, the previous entries by Sideshow and Hot Toys were not bad, but the dedicated fanbase saw so much room for improvement. There's a thriving community just for customizing these figures, which is why I'm pretty excited to see a new retail release for this franchise. Starting with the head sculpts, I'm pleased to find that the smirking face on the left is much better than what we saw in the promo pics. Out of the box, it's also one of the best likeness to Ford, without having to pay an arm and a leg for a custom sculpt. The proportions of the slightly crooked nose, eyes that aren't too deep, and the faint scar on the chin all strike a good balance. The smiling sculpt on the right though, I personally found it to be right on the cusp of the uncanny valley. The likeness is certainly there, and I get where they're going with this portrait, but it feels just a little unnatural to me. In its defense, this smiling sculpt looks better in hand, and it's a very respectable attempt, because Harrison Ford's likeness is notoriously difficult to nail even for Hot Toys. Maybe that's secretly why he destroyed his own action figure on national television. Even the costume has its own fair share of ups and downs. Starting with the fedora, it's sculpted in hard plastic and is a permanent fixture for each portrait, which I'd argue is for the better, so there's no need for those awkward hair sculpt changes. The overall proportions are spot on too, and the ribbon is made of actual fabric. Moving on to the base shirt, while it's definitely awesome to see the two pleats on the shoulders, the chest pockets, and even unhooked buttons appearing on the proper side of the shirt, the collar itself is a little too big, and it rises a little too much, making it seem like a turtleneck at times. The cuffs are sewn in, so you can't unbutton them and roll up the sleeves like in the movie, nor can you pull them up the arms too far neither, which is a bummer, but you do have the option to untuck his shirt on one side. According to Present Toys, this jacket is made of real leather, so proper treatment is recommended to prolong its life. It's super soft to the touch and certainly feels genuine, and if you're a weirdo like me who takes a big whiff when opening your figures, this jacket even smells like a leather store. It's also very thoughtful that the backside of the collar is made of fabric, so it sits a little better, because the overall thickness does get in the way of the physique, which we'll see in a second. Otherwise, this jacket's got everything you would expect, such as these front pockets and these buckled vents on the back. This belt's got a functioning clamp-style buckle, which is yet another ambitious detail that works really well here. The tailoring on these khaki pants are just fine, though I certainly wouldn't mind if the fit is slightly longer and baggier. This pair of Alden 405 has a pretty accurate anatomy, with real laces, soft leathery ankle collars, and stiff toe caps. The weathering on the bottom is missing for one of my boots, which I thought was a funny mishap, as if Indy had just stolen one shoe or something. Next, let's see how this costume plays into articulations. To start, yes, Present Toys seems to have commissioned a unique body for this release. And without the costume, the overall physique is actually not bad, even if the articulations aren't particularly stellar. There's no movement on the neck below the head sculpt. The elbows are single-jointed. The build quality can also be slightly better, because the torso joint is really loose, but the shoulder joints are really stiff on my copy. Beyond that, the articulations are fairly typical of the hobby. Now, without the jacket, I'd even argue that mild poses could look pretty decent with the proper setup. But I can't shake the fact that, when the somewhat raised shirt collar is combined with a rather thick jacket, the physique of the upper body is diminished to an extent, especially when you leave Indy in a dynamic pose. Though personally, this doesn't bother me all too much, as the likeness of a head sculpt is something I value much more. Besides, I usually leave my figures in boring museum poses anyway. But for those dedicated collectors, I completely understand the desire to swap out the body and costume. For instance, I just slapped on the Hot Toys jacket here and immediately saw an improvement on the shoulder line. But customizing this is a whole other topic for another video. In any case, the accessories are the absolute essentials for Indy's typical adventures. First up is his signature bullwhip. It's made with leather strips that are meticulously braided from tip to tip, and ends with a single strip tied to an even smaller thread. There's even a wired lining from the handle to about here, so there's some degree of posability. Next we have the Smith & Wesson Mark II hand ejector revolver, as seen on the streets of Cairo. It's complete with the proper barrel length and ramped front sight, a rotating cylinder, and a movable hammer. Then we have this leathery belt and holster, though you might need to swap the direction of the belts. Other than that, this thing looks and feels great, with a magnetic lock that can completely encase the revolver. It's a little messy to loop the whip through this hook, but it gets the job done decently well. Then we have this shoulder bag with an accompanying journal. The leather straps are adjustable, and the bag has a snap-on button under the flap. The journal is made of actual paper, though the pages inside are completely blank. Even so, this piece greatly complements the bag. Lastly, we have the standard crotch grabber display stand with a sticker of Jones, who is, in no way related to Indiana Jones. This thing is clutch though, because the ankle joints are kinda flimsy on my figure. And finally for the size comparison, here we have the Sideshow Indy from Temple of Doom, followed by this Hot Toys A New Hope Han Solo with a custom head sculpt. And it's here it becomes really obvious that the thickness on the Present Toys costume is not doing the physique any favors. And for those who are curious, you can swap the head sculpts on these two indies by removing the neck pegs. It's not a secure fit, but they will sit on the neck just fine. Though it should be noted that the Sideshow head sculpts doesn't match the skin tone on the Present Toys body. Strangely, this isn't the case the other way around. In fact, I'd say the Present Toys sculpt looks pretty good on the Sideshow body. So there you have it, the 1/6 scale Indiana Jones by Present Toys. From the head sculpt's less than promising promo pics to the fantastic final product, it's easy to see why this release is such a sleeper hit. At MSRP, this indie figure is certainly the best bang for your buck. The costume and base body still has a lot of room for improvement, but given the plethora of head sculpts out there that bear debatable likeness to Harrison Ford, Present Toys' surprisingly phenomenal portraits are quite an accomplishment. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.